Ma'am, that's not real medicine. You can't bring street drugs on this plane. Flight attendant Monica Ray's voice cut through the low hum of the engines as she yanked a small blue inhaler from Aaliyah Brooks's hand. The cabin froze. Seatbelts clicked. A baby stopped fussing as if sensing the sudden change in pressure. "That's my inhaler," Aaliyah gasped, pushing a tight braid from her face. "I need it to breathe." Monica tilted her head, lips curving in something that wasn't quite a smile. "If you really need it, you'll have proper documentation. We can't let random substances on board." She held the inhaler aloft, as if presenting evidence. Across the aisle, a man lowered his phone, already recording. Another passenger whispered, "What's happening?" Fingers darted for cameras, lenses peeking above headrests. Aaliyah sat up straighter, trying to stay calm. "There's a medical ID bracelet on my wrist. It says severe asthma." She raised her trembling arm. Monica barely glanced. "That could be fake. People fake all kinds of things these days." The quiet inside the aircraft felt heavy. Even the ventilation hiss seemed to wait. From the galley, Jordan Price, a junior flight attendant on his first month, hesitated, a tray in his hands. Fresh-faced, dark-skinned, his eyes flicked from Monica to the girl, then back again. Monica caught his gaze and gave the slightest nod, an unspoken order to stay out of it. Aaliyah's chest fluttered with a shallow breath. "Please," her voice thin but steady. "I can't—" "Sit tight," Monica interrupted, tone edged with steel. "You'll get it back once we're sure it's not a threat." The man in 14C muttered, "It's an inhaler, not a weapon." Monica shot him a warning look. "Sir, remain seated. Security protocols are in place." Phones kept rising. A ripple of unease moved through the cabin. Aaliyah looked around. Faces, cameras, judgment. And then at the inhaler, still locked in Monica's fist. Her pulse hammered in her ears. Something in the attendant's expression told her this wasn't about a simple policy check. Her mind raced, flashing back just a few minutes to the moment she first stepped onto the plane. It hadn't started here. It had started at row 2. Aaliyah Brooks stepped into the aisle of first class, ticket still warm in her hand. Row 2 gleamed ahead, her seat, 2A, right by the window. But a broad-shouldered white man was already planted there, legs spread, scrolling his phone like he owned the cabin. "You're mistaken, kid," he said without looking up, voice casual but loaded. "This one's mine." Aaliyah blinked, checked the stub again. "It says 2A, she replied, steady but polite. She'd been raised to stand tall even when the air felt thin. Before she could speak again, flight attendant Monica Ray swept in from the galley, heels clicking on the carpet. She glanced from the man to Aaliyah, then flicked her eyes toward Jordan Price, the junior flight attendant, who hovered with a stack of blankets. A tiny coded signal passed, quick as a wink, then Monica's smile widened. "Let's not hold up boarding," Monica said smoothly, turning her body toward Aaliyah while keeping the man in her peripheral vision. "Why don't we seat you in 23F for now? We'll sort this mix-up once we're airborne." "I have a confirmed ticket," Aaliyah answered, careful to keep her tone even. Around her, passengers were still settling, snapping overhead bins, murmuring over coffee orders, but a few nearby heads turned, curious. "Of course, sweetheart," Monica cooed, still wearing that professional glaze. "It's just temporary." Jordan shifted, clearly uneasy. He opened his mouth, caught Monica's subtle shake of the head, and closed it again. His hands tightened on the blankets. Aaliyah's gut twisted. She'd flown plenty, but something about this felt wrong, like stepping onto a porch where the floorboards waited to break. She looked at the man in 2A. He raised an eyebrow, smug, as if he knew the outcome already. The quiet between the attendants stretched thin. Finally, Monica leaned in just close enough for only Jordan to see the warning flash in her eyes. Then, with a saccharine tone that masked an edge, she guided Aaliyah down the aisle. "Seat 23F, right over here, honey." As she settled into the narrow coach seat, Aaliyah caught Monica returning to the front. The attendant's expression, for a heartbeat, slipped. No warmth, just calculation. The man in 2A slid his phone into his pocket, lips curling in a satisfied half-smile. Something in this cabin wasn't an accident. Aaliyah sank into 23F, the narrow seat a world away from the window view of 2A. The injustice of it all, the knowing smirk on the man's face, made her chest tighten. She fumbled in her backpack, fingers closing around the cool plastic of her inhaler. It was a familiar ritual, a quick puff to open her airways before they could betray her. But before she could lift it to her lips, a shadow fell over her. Flight attendant Monica Ray stood in the aisle, a clipboard clutched in one hand, her smile as thin and brittle as ice. "I'm sorry, but I'll have to take a look at that." Aaliyah clutched the inhaler tighter. "It's my prescription medication." "And I'm sure it is," Monica said, her voice loud enough for the surrounding rows to hear, dripping with false concern. "But for the safety of everyone on board, we have to verify all unbottled substances. It's policy." This was it, the final move. Aaliyah looked up, her eyes meeting Monica's. And in that moment, Monica leaned in, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper meant only for her. "Your father isn't on this flight manifest to protect you, is he?" The words hit harder than any physical blow. It confirmed everything. This was personal. This was punishment. Nearby, an older black woman peering over her glasses frowned, sensing the malice beneath the professional tone. A young man across the aisle discreetly angled his phone. Aaliyah's hand trembled, but she held on. "You have no right," she said, her voice low but firm. Monica's smile vanished. "I have every right." With a sudden, sharp movement, she pried the inhaler from Aaliyah's grasp. She didn't just take it, she displayed it to the cabin like a trophy. "Ma'am, that's not real medicine," she announced to the now silent cabin, her voice ringing with authority. "You can't bring street drugs on this plane." A collective gasp rippled through the rows. The accusation, so public, so vile, hung in the recycled air. In the galley, Jordan Price dropped a stack of napkins. His head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief and horror. Monica shot him a look, a clear, cold warning. Aaliyah's lungs seized. The shock, the humiliation, the sudden terror. It triggered the very attack she had tried to prevent. She pressed a hand to her chest, her breath catching in ragged, shallow gasps. The phones were no longer hiding. They were out, lenses focused, recording the moment a flight attendant had just publicly accused a teenage girl of being a drug user, all while holding her life-saving medicine hostage. The trap hadn't just been set, it had been sprung for everyone to see. Phones snapped up like a sudden storm. A boy in a varsity hoodie, barely out of high school, angled his camera over the seatback, livestream already rolling on Insta. "Yo, y'all see this?" His voice was low, shaky with outrage. The frame caught Aaliyah gasping, Monica Ray holding the inhaler like evidence, and a row of stunned faces frozen in recycled air. He swung the camera to the cabin, then back to Aaliyah. Comments raced across the screen, fire emojis, angry faces, text flying faster than he could read. "Is she serious? That's an asthma pump. Get her dad on the phone right now." Across the aisle, an older black woman adjusted her Sunday hat, eyes narrowing. She didn't need a live stream to read the malice dripping beneath professional polish. Her stare said what generations had taught. "We see you, and we're not afraid to bear witness." In the Delta Lounge 2 gates away, civil rights host Tasha Green paused mid-sip of tea. Her phone buzzed with a push from the app, live feed trending near the terminal. She tapped, screen filling with Aaliyah's face, the inhaler clutched in a stranger's grip. Tasha's brow arched. She toggled to her platform's camera and reposted instantly, adding a line sharp as a headline. "Justice for Aaliyah. This is happening right now on Flight 447. The number of viewers tripled in a blink. Hearts, shocked emojis, angry fists spilled across feeds. People tagged friends, cousins, pastors, teachers. In barbershops and cafes across the country, notifications pinged. Back on board, Jordan Price felt the shift before he saw it. Passengers leaning out into the aisle, their phones fixed on Monica. The quiet no longer felt safe for the crew. It was gathering heat, an invisible jury. Even the man in 2A lowered his paper, uneasy now that the lights of a million strangers' screens were aimed their way. Monica's posture stiffened. She straightened the clipboard, but the brittle smile stayed locked, daring anyone to challenge her. Aaliyah, still fighting for breath, caught the old woman's eye, a silent exchange of strength. The air in the cabin wasn't just heavy with jet fuel and recycled oxygen anymore. It was charged, alive, and recording every second. From the middle rows, a tall figure rose, steady despite the turbulence of whispers. Dr. Samuel Lee, a retired pulmonologist and deacon at a local church, stepped into the aisle, white hair catching the overhead light. He carried the calm of someone who had walked hospital corridors at midnight, and it settled the space for an instant. "Ma'am, she's in respiratory distress." His voice was firm, not raised, but every ear caught it. Aaliyah's breaths rasped quick, shallow. Her fingers clamped around the armrest. The phones captured the sheen of sweat at her temples, the trembling effort to draw air. Monica folded her arms across the clipboard, posture immaculate. "Sir, this is a security matter," she replied, tone polished steel. "We have protocols." The older woman in the Sunday hat leaned forward. "That baby needs her pump," she murmured, not to anyone in particular, but the sentence carried the weight of kitchen table wisdom, the kind passed through generations. Dr. Lee kept his gaze on Monica. "That pump is a bronchodilator. Without it, she risks hypoxia." He spoke as though presenting a diagnosis in court, each syllable deliberate. "This is a medical emergency." Jordan Price shifted near the galley, tray forgotten. The junior flight attendant's jaw flexed. He glanced at Monica, then back at the teenager fighting for breath. Monica's nails tapped against the clipboard. "Our priority is the safety of everyone on board," she announced, louder now, aiming at the cabin. "We can't compromise for unverified substances." The tension tightened, a cable stretched to breaking. Aaliyah coughed, shoulders jerking. A ripple of alarm traveled through the rows. Someone muttered about lawsuits. Another about ADA rights. The livestream angle widened, catching the standoff, a girl gasping, a doctor standing sentinel, an attendant defending policy. Dr. Lee didn't move. "Every second you delay raises the chance she'll collapse," he warned quietly. "You're responsible if that happens." Monica's smile hardened, the mask cracking at the edges. She glanced at Jordan again, a flash of command in her eyes, before looking back at the cabin, daring anyone to challenge her authority. Aaliyah clung to the seat, lungs tight, gaze fixed on the doctor who refused to back down. For the first time since the trap sprang, hope flickered in the recycled air. Monica's fingers tightened around the mic clipped to her vest. "Possible narcotics. Prepare to deplane." Her voice carried down the aisle, smooth but laced with something sharp. Passengers exchanged wary glances, the live stream catching every syllable. At the forward door, 2 TSA officers stepped on board, dark uniforms absorbing the cabin light. Their eyes scanned the rows, cool and impersonal, hands resting just above the clasps of their holsters. The air changed, thicker, brittle with authority. Aaliyah pressed herself against the seatback, chest rising in short bursts. The scene replayed too many stories she'd heard at home. Sons and daughters turned into suspects because someone decided they looked out of place. Her grandmother's words echoed, "Keep your head high, even when they try to bow it for you." Dr. Lee shifted just enough to block part of the aisle, body language calm but protective. Monica angled her body toward the newcomers, presenting the inhaler like contraband. "Unverified substance, uncooperative passenger," she stated, voice pitched to sound objective. The smirk ghosting her lips betrayed the performance. Phones tilted higher. The older black woman in the hat set her jaw, hands folded tight over her purse, gaze unblinking. From somewhere behind, a man's voice, low, steady, asked if anyone on board knew the ADA regulations. The livestream comments flooded. "She's a child. Give her the pump. This is about race." The lead TSA officer took a measured step forward. "Miss, we need you to come with us." Polite on the surface, but the undertone carried finality. Aaliyah's breath hitched, a rasp that scratched her throat raw. She gripped the seat back in front of her, knuckles pale, trying to anchor herself against the surge of panic. The inhaler gleamed in Monica's grasp, inches, yet worlds away. Dr. Lee's eyes met the officer's. "She's having an asthma attack," he said, low, but forceful. "You remove her now. You risk her life." Aaliyah drew another ragged breath, gaze steady despite the tears brimming. She wasn't just fighting for air anymore. She was standing inside a history written on too many boarding passes, waiting to see if anyone would break the script. A vibration pulsed against Aaliyah's thigh, sharp through the fabric of her jeans. Her phone lit up in the seat pocket, Dad across the screen in bold white letters. The ringtone felt too loud inside the heavy silence. Jordan Price caught the glow as he stepped closer with an abandoned water cup. For a heartbeat, he looked ready to hand it over. Then his eyes flicked to Monica standing with the TSA officers. Her expression was cool, a warning etched in the curve of her brow. Jordan hesitated, fingers tightening on the cup. Aaliyah lunged for the phone, breath snagging in her throat. The movement sent a spike of pain through her chest, but she pressed the green icon anyway, hands trembling. "Dad!" Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "They're taking my inhaler." On the line, static hissed. Then a deep voice broke through, taut with urgency. She could make out fragments over the thrum of the engines. "Where are you? Stay calm." "I'm coming." Monica's posture stiffened. She gestured toward the phone, addressing the TSA with a theatrical lift of her brows. "Unauthorized call during a security intervention," she announced, words aimed at the cabin. "This has to stop." The older woman in the hat leaned into the aisle, her gaze unwavering. "That child needs her daddy and that medicine," she murmured, voice rich with the weight of lived battles. Her words weren't meant to argue. They were testimony. Passengers shifted, phones high. Some started counting softly, 10, 11, as if the situation had become a clock ticking down. The live stream chat exploded. "Call her father back! Don't let them take her! Hashtag let her breathe." Aaliyah pressed the phone harder against her ear, tears cutting hot trails down her cheeks. She forced another breath, voice steadier now, despite the rasp. "Gate 4, 7, she managed. "Please hurry." Jordan swallowed, jaw tight. The young attendant edged closer, putting the cup of water on her tray table, eyes flicking nervously toward Monica. Aaliyah's lungs burned. She clutched the seat back in front of her, clinging to the voice on the line. Every second stretched, charged with the knowledge that her father was somewhere in the same airport and that Monica knew it too. The trap wasn't just about humiliation anymore. It was about keeping her isolated, fighting for breath, while help stood one call away. A burst of audio cut through the tense cabin, crisp over the speaker above row 23. "This is Captain Darnell Brooks, Chief of Flight Operations. I need everyone on Flight 47 to stay calm while I address a developing situation." Heads snapped up. The phones that had been filming wavered for an instant, then steadied, recording again. Aaliyah's tear-brimmed eyes widened. She clutched the armrest, clinging to the sound of her father's voice breaking through the static. At the front, Monica Ray's shoulders stiffened. The faint smile she'd worn dissolved into a taut line. She turned, clipboard pressed to her chest, scanning the cabin as if weighing every witness. Passengers whispered, snatches of recognition. Someone murmured that Brooks's name was on Delta training manuals. A middle-aged man in coach muttered, "That's the guy who wrote the safety reforms." Monica pivoted toward the TSA agents, voice sharp but controlled. "Captain Brooks has no operational authority inside this cabin. This is my aircraft until we're airborne." Her tone snapped like wire, but beneath it a flicker of nerves betrayed itself in the tightness of her jaw. Aaliyah's phone, still open on speaker, crackled with Darnell's measured calm. "I'm fully authorized to intervene when crew actions endanger a passenger's life," he said. "That passenger is my daughter. Return her inhaler and stand by for further instructions." A murmur rolled down the aisle. The older woman in the hat gave a soft, approving nod, the kind of gesture that spoke of years spent fighting to be heard. Jordan Price hovered near the beverage cart, conflict etched across his face. The young attendant's gaze bounced between Monica and the phone, sweat gathering at his hairline. Monica straightened, voice rising so everyone could hear. "Captain, you're speaking out of turn. This crew has a protocol for suspicious items. That device will remain secured until we land, or law enforcement clears it." Darnell's reply came through steady, no hint of strain. "That device is an FDA-approved bronchodilator. Your protocol does not override federal medical accommodation laws or common sense." The livestream angle widened, catching the TSA officers, Monica's clipboard, Aaliyah gripping the seat, the doctor bracing in the aisle. Comments blazed. "Her dad's a captain? They still won't give it back?" Monica's nails dug into the edge of her board. Her eyes swept the passengers, daring one to step forward. "This isn't about family ties," she insisted, voice honeyed again. "It's about keeping everyone safe." Aaliyah locked eyes with her father's name glowing on the screen, strength flickering through the haze of fear. The room, metal walls, recycled air, screens flashing, felt ready to split. And somewhere beyond the jet bridge, the man who knew every inch of a Delta aircraft was already moving toward her, bringing with him a weight Monica couldn't control. Darnell Brooks cut through the terminal at a sprint, polished shoes striking the tile with metronomic precision. Gate numbers blurred past, but his mind stayed locked on row 23F, on Aaliyah gasping while strangers debated her right to breathe. His phone vibrated in his palm. A voice from corporate security came fast, clipped, practiced. "Captain Brooks, Monica Ray has filed an incident report. She claims a disruptive passenger is endangering crew safety, and you're attempting to override her authority. We need you to stand down." He didn't break stride. The echo of his steps mingled with boarding calls and the faint hiss of coffee machines. Above him, monitors showed rolling news tickers about travel delays, blissfully unaware of the storm breaking at one gate. "Stand down," he muttered under his breath. He dodged a family hauling suitcases, the urgency in his chest heavier than any luggage. The voice in his ear continued, cautioning about chain of command, liability, potential misuse of rank. His jaw clenched. Images flashed. His daughter at 5, learning to ride a bike. At 12, reciting church verses from memory. At 16, standing beside him in uniform for a father-daughter photo at an aviation scholarship dinner. He would not let a line in a manual become a weapon against her. Another call tried to break through. Tasha Green from the lounge, voice urgent on voicemail. "500,000 views already. She's trending live. Handle this carefully, Captain. People are watching." Darnell slowed just long enough to steady his breath, then picked up speed. He pushed through a cluster of travelers, murmured apologies, badge flashing as he held it high. A TSA supervisor at the jet bridge tried to intercept, quoting rules about jurisdiction. Darnell met his eyes, calm but unyielding. "There's a minor and respiratory crisis. That takes precedence." The man stepped aside, unsettled by the quiet authority in his tone. He lengthened his stride, weaving between gate carts and startled passengers. Ahead, the jet bridge door came into view, guarded by 2 officers scanning IDs. Darnell straightened his jacket, eyes steady. Whatever bureaucracy Monica had spun, it would not stop him from reaching his daughter. The real countdown wasn't in manuals or policies. It was written in every ragged breath Aaliyah was still fighting to take. Monica Ray shifted her weight, heels planted firm on the aisle carpet. The clipboard rested against her hip like a shield. Her gaze swept the cabin, then locked on Jordan Price, still standing by the beverage cart. Jordan. Her voice slid through the tension, low but edged. Tell them how aggressive she got when I checked that device. Every eye turned. The phones tracking Monica now pivoted toward the young attendant. Jordan felt the heat of them, the scrutiny pressing against his collar. He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed hard. The faces in coach were a blur. Business travelers, grandmothers, college kids clutching their carry-ons. But in the middle of it all sat Aaliyah, chest rising in shallow bursts, eyes fixed on him with a quiet plea. Jordan's own reflection flashed in a nearby window. A 23-year-old black man in his first month on the job, pressed uniform still stiff from training. He knew how fragile a start could be, how one wrong move could put you on a list you never got off. Monica stepped closer, voice pitched for the TSA agents. You witnessed her snatch it right out of my hand, didn't you? A clear threat. Her words dangled like bait. Jordan's pulse thudded. He'd grown up hearing stories of relatives cornered in boardrooms, classrooms, parking lots, people who had to choose between truth and survival. The memory of his uncle's warning flickered. They'll test you. Pick the hill you're willing to die on. Aaliyah's fingers tightened on the armrest, knuckles pale. She didn't speak, but the look in her eyes, sharp, steady despite the rasp in her lungs, cut through the fog of fear. Jordan's throat felt dry. The syllable wavered. He shifted his weight, hands pressed to the drink cart for balance. I'm not sure, he said finally, voice quiet but clear enough to carry. A ripple moved through the rows. Some passengers frowned, sensing the compromise. Others silently urged him forward. The livestream comments scrolled fast. Stand up for her, bro. Don't let them use you. Monica's smile was thin, satisfied, though the muscles in her jaw twitched. She turned back to the officers, framing Jordan's hesitation as support. You see? Even my colleague can't confirm her story. Jordan kept his eyes on Aaliyah. Regret settled heavy in his chest, but under it lived a flicker of resolve. The moment hadn't ended. It had only marked the line he would need to cross before this flight was over. A heavy thud echoed from beyond the cabin door, measured footsteps crossing the jet bridge, each one closer, sharper than the last. Passengers stiffened, phones angling toward the sound. The livestream numbers ticked higher, hearts and angry emojis flooding the feed. The metal latch released with a hiss, and a tall figure filled the doorway. Captain Darnell Brooks, Delta Navy blazer crisp against a starched white shirt, stepped inside like a storm contained in human form. His eyes swept the cabin in a clean, practiced arc. First the TSA officers, their stance unsure now that a higher authority stood present. Then Monica Ray, clipboard locked against her chest, face polished into something brittle. Jordan Price lingered by the galley, shoulders taut. Finally, Darnell's gaze landed on Aaliyah. She sat upright in 23F, knuckles white on the armrest, breath shallow but measured. The sight of him, calm, rooted, pulled a flicker of relief across her tear-streaked face. Darnell advanced down the aisle, each step deliberate, the quiet around him deepening. Monica shifted subtly, body angling toward the TSA agents as if to remind them of her control. Captain Brooks, she greeted, tone too smooth. This is an active security assessment. Darnell didn't pause. His focus remained on his daughter, then on the small blue inhaler clutched against Monica's clipboard. He stopped beside Aaliyah's row, close enough for her to catch the faint scent of jet fuel on his jacket. Evidence he'd come straight from the tarmac. Aaliyah. His voice was low, steady, carrying enough weight to settle the rows behind him. Breathe slow. I'm here now. Her fingers loosened from the seat back, just slightly. He turned to the crew, posture a study in calm authority. Return the medication to its rightful owner, he said, no volume wasted. And do it before this situation escalates any further. Phones recorded every movement, every word. The livestream chat exploded. Dad's here! Look at her face! Game over for that attendant! Monica's chin lifted a fraction. She offered a faint, brittle smile, but her knuckles whitened on the clipboard. The power shift was visible, a tide turning inside the narrow fuselage. Darnell let the silence stretch, his presence filling the cabin. The man who'd trained pilots and rewritten safety manuals now stood between a teenage girl and a system that had cornered her. And for the first time since boarding, the balance of the fight belonged to Aaliyah. "You're safe now," he said, voice anchored in calm that belied the storm around them. "Breathe slow, in through your nose." Aaliyah drew a shaky inhale, the rasp still there but steadier with every second of his focus. Passengers watched, phones poised, some whispering prayers under their breath. The older woman in the Sunday hat nodded faintly, a quiet benediction. Darnell straightened, turning fully toward Monica. The warmth he'd shown his daughter drained from his face, replaced by an authority sharpened through decades of cockpit decisions. "Return the medication," he instructed, each word clipped, deliberate. "Now." Monica's fingers flexed on the inhaler pressed against her clipboard. The smile she tried to summon faltered, corners trembling. "Captain Brooks, with respect, there are procedures." Darnell raised a hand, palm steady but unyielding. "No procedure supersedes a passenger's right to breathe. Not the manual, not your report. Hand it over." The TSA agents shifted, uncertain. Jordan Price glanced between them, resolve starting to gather behind the hesitation in his eyes. Aaliyah's breath hitched again, reminding everyone why they were here. Darnell's gaze never left Monica's face. "Every second you hold that pump, you gamble with her life," he said, low and resonant. "If something happens to her, this cabin becomes a crime scene." A ripple moved through the rows, murmurs of agreement, righteous anger warming the air. The livestream feed scrolled faster. "Give it back!" "He's right. She's playing with fire." Monica hesitated, clipboard trembling just enough for nearby cameras to catch. Power, once solid in her grip, thinned under the weight of eyes, on board and across thousands of screens. Darnell stepped closer, a wall between her and the girl. "You've already crossed one line," he said, voice low but carrying to the back of the aircraft. "Don't cross another you can't step back from." The silence stretched, charged. All that existed in that moment was a father, a daughter fighting for breath, and an attendant clutching a decision that could decide everything. Monica squared her shoulders, clipboard clutched like a badge. "Security threat protocols override ADA accommodations," she announced, voice pitched for the cabin. "Federal law gives us discretion when there's a potential narcotics risk." A hush slid over the rows. Passengers leaned in, their screens catching every flicker of tension. Aaliyah's breaths rasped soft but steady. She watched her father, hope pinned on his composure. Darnell stood tall in the narrow aisle, calm radiating through the steel of his frame. "That's not what the law says," he replied, tone precise, steady as a checklist in turbulence. "Federal regulations and ADA requirements guarantee access to life-saving medication. That inhaler is covered." Jordan Price shifted by the galley, fingers knotting against his uniform. The livestream chat pulsed. "She's lying. Read the law, sis." Had let her breathe. From 2 rows back, Dr. Samuel Lee stepped closer, eyes alert behind wire-rimmed glasses. His hand slid from his pocket, producing an elegant black pen. He angled it toward Darnell, voice low enough for only a few to hear. "Captain, this might help." Darnell glanced at the object, recognition sparking. He took it, thumb brushing a hidden switch. A tiny LED winked to life. The livestream caught a shimmer of curiosity across nearby faces. The screen on Darnell's phone lit up as the pen synced. A crisp video played, Monica leaning over row 23F, fingers snapping the inhaler from Aaliyah's grasp, voice a razor-thin whisper. "Your father can't protect you forever." Gasps rippled through the cabin. Someone clapped a hand over their mouth. Others raised phones higher, capturing the playback. Comments flooded. Caught in 4K. She set her up. That's the proof. Monica froze, color draining under the cabin lights. She glanced at the TSA officers, searching for support, but their stance shifted, less rigid, less sure. The power she'd wielded a moment earlier sagged under the weight of the evidence. Darnell turned the phone so the rows behind could see, his voice cutting through the hum of engines. "This isn't about security," he said. "This is retaliation, recorded in real time." The older woman in the hat gave a small nod, a quiet amen carried in her breath. Jordan's eyes widened, guilt and relief warring across his face. Monica's hand twitched on the clipboard, but no words came.
The livestream counter soared past 1,000,000, a flood of fire emojis and justice hashtags filling screens everywhere. In the tight fuselage, the trap she'd built collapsed under its own weight, and the cabin watched justice surface from a single hidden lens. Darnell held the phone high, the still frame of Monica's whisper frozen on the screen. The cabin's hum felt like a drum roll waiting for its cue. He set the device on the armrest, straightened to his full height, and fixed Monica with a gaze sharp enough to cut through steel. "Here's where we stand." His voice was calm, but carried the precision of a closing argument. "The Americans with Disabilities Act, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and Delta's own accommodation policy all guarantee immediate access to life-saving medication. You violated each one." He paced a slow half-step closer, the measured authority of a man used to commanding cockpits. "Civil liability for endangering a minor? 2 million, minimum. Discrimination penalties? Add another 5. Loss of license and termination with cause." He glanced at the live streaming phones. "And don't underestimate the cost of 1,000,000 witnesses." Monica's chin tilted up, but the strain around her mouth betrayed cracks in her composure. She looked toward the TSA officers, toward Jordan, searching for ground that wasn't there. Darnell rested one hand on the back of Aaliyah's seat. "You're holding a pump that keeps a teenager alive. A pump you snatched while cameras rolled. That's not just a mistake, Ms. Ray. That's a career-ending decision with a price tag." He checked his watch, each tick audible in the charged silence. 60 seconds, he said evenly. "Choose wisely." A murmur rippled through the rows, soft gasps, someone whispering a prayer, others nodding in agreement. The older woman in the hat leaned forward, eyes bright with solidarity. The livestream chat scrolled. "She's cooked. Give it back." Justice for Aaliyah. Monica's grip tightened around the inhaler. Sweat shone at her hairline under the LED glow of raised phones. Jordan shifted his weight. Conflict etched across his face. This was the line between complicity and courage. Darnell's voice dropped lower, resonant enough to reach the farthest seat. "You have a chance to step back from the edge. Hand over the medication, apologize to my daughter, and walk out with what's left of your dignity, or stand there and let every person watching decide your future." The cabin waited, breath suspended, as the countdown to accountability began. Monica's fingers twitched around the inhaler, knuckles pale against the blue plastic. For a heartbeat, she stood rigid, breath caught, eyes flicking from the passengers' phones to the TSA officers blocking the aisle. Then something cracked. Her voice tore through the silence, brittle and raw. "You ruined my husband's career, Brooks." The words hissed out like steam escaping a valve. 12 years of service, gone because of one report you filed. I wanted you to feel what it's like to be powerless." A shockwave rippled through the cabin. Passengers exchanged glances, whispers riding the pressurized air. The livestream feed lit with scrolling text. Revenge? She admitted it. #power trip. Aaliyah looked up at her father. For the first time, she understood. The scene wasn't just about a pump. It was a battle carved out of history, a clash between dignity and bitterness, between a man who'd built safety rules and someone who wanted to burn them down.
Darnell's gaze never wavered. "Your grievance was with me," he said evenly, each word deliberate. "You chose to take it out on a child." Monica flinched but clung to defiance. "You cost my family everything. Why should you keep yours untouched?" The TSA officer shifted, waiting for a cue. Darnell extended his hand, palm open, calm as a closing door. "Return what doesn't belong to you." Her breath trembled. Slowly, she peeled the inhaler from the clipboard, placed it in his palm. The cabin exhaled with her. Darnell turned, crouched, and offered the device to Aaliyah. Relief softened the edges of her face as she pressed the mouthpiece to her lips, drawing a measured breath. "Badge and wings," Darnell said quietly, attention sliding back to Monica. Her jaw tightened. She unpinned the silver emblem from her chest, unclipped the plastic ID. Each motion felt like tearing fabric. She laid them on the clipboard, hands lingering a second before she let go. The older woman in the hat nodded once, satisfaction glinting beneath compassion. Someone in the rear started clapping. Another joined, then more, until applause rolled through the fuselage like thunder trapped in aluminum. The TSA agents moved in, gentle but firm, guiding Monica toward the front. Her shoulders hunched under the weight of eyes, passengers, crew, the unblinking gaze of livestream cameras. Aaliyah sat taller, inhaler steady in her grasp. Beside her, Darnell rested a hand on the seatback, protective, but proud. The crisis had been about air, but the victory tasted of something deeper. Respect wrestled back from humiliation, a legacy guarded in real time. Applause faded into a warm murmur as the TSA escorted Monica up the aisle. The tension that had held the cabin hostage eased, replaced by a current of quiet triumph. Darnell crouched beside Aaliyah one last time, scanning her face for any hint of strain. Her breathing was steadier now, shoulders no longer locked in panic. He gestured toward the front of the plane. "Let's get you back to your seat." The path to 2A cleared as passengers shifted aside, many offering small nods of encouragement. Aaliyah rose carefully, inhaler clutched tight, and followed her father toward first class. The weight of every phone trained on them felt less like surveillance now, and more like a shield. Row 2 gleamed ahead, wide leather seat, window spilling late afternoon light across polished armrests. It looked impossibly far from the chaos she had endured only minutes before. Jordan Price stood there, posture crisp, but eyes heavy with regret. He stepped forward, placing a fresh bottle of water and a folded blanket on the seatback table. "Everything's set for you," he murmured, voice low, earnest. He adjusted the headrest, then paused, meeting her gaze. A flicker of apology passed between them, unspoken but clear. Aaliyah sank into 2A, letting the soft leather hold her weight. She tested her breathing, one long inhale, one steady exhale, then nodded almost imperceptibly at Jordan. The gesture was small, but it loosened the shame that had clung to him since Monica's glare silenced his voice. Darnell remained at her side, one hand resting on her shoulder, steady as a tower. "You handled yourself with grace," he told her, words measured but warm. "Most grown folks would have crumbled under that kind of pressure." The older woman in the Sunday hat passed by on her way to the lavatory, laying a gentle hand over Aaliyah's free one. "Proud of you, baby," she whispered, the lilt of a choir soloist softening her tone. Then she moved on, leaving behind a quiet blessing. Jordan adjusted the aisle curtain, shielding them from curious eyes while he finished settling first-class passengers. His movements carried new resolve, an unspoken promise to stand firmer next time. Outside the window, ground crew signaled on the tarmac, the sun casting a golden streak across the jet bridge. Inside, the cabin hummed with something different than before. No longer fear, but respect, solidarity, and the steady rhythm of a girl reclaiming her place. Darnell settled into the jump seat beside 2A,
the cabin now alive with soft conversations and the occasional camera flash. He pulled a slim tablet from his jacket, screen already glowing with a fresh memo from headquarters. Across the top, bold letters read, "Emergency Directive, Med Access Initiative." He angled the display so Aaliyah could see. "Corporate moved fast," he murmured, voice carrying just enough for Jordan, hovering nearby, to hear. On the screen, bullet points scrolled. Mandatory 40-hour training on medical devices for all flight attendants. Immediate implementation of MedAccess app. Passengers can register prescriptions at check-in for instant crew verification. Further down, a line glinted under the cabin lights. Non-compliance equals termination on first offense. Jordan's eyes flickered at the clause, then settled on Aaliyah with a look that held both apology and resolve. Aaliyah traced a finger just above the glass, reading the words without touching. Relief spread across her face, but didn't erase the shadow in her gaze. "It's good," she whispered, almost to herself. "But it shouldn't take a live stream to make people do the right thing." The older woman in the Sunday hat, now settled back in coach, caught her tone and nodded from a distance, a silent amen that rippled across decades of stories about rules written in pain before becoming policy. Darnell leaned closer, steady hand resting on the seatback behind her. "Every system resists change until someone forces the issue," he said. "Today, you forced it, with calm, not rage. That matters." Outside the window, twilight stretched long over the tarmac. Inside, the memo's glow lit their faces, a quiet counterpoint to the chaos that had shaken the plane only minutes before. Jordan cleared his throat softly. "I'll finish service after we're airborne," he said, careful but earnest. "And I'll make sure the new crew understands why this memo exists." Aaliyah let out a slow breath, shoulders finally releasing their last knot of tension. Around her, the cabin felt different, lighter, safer, threaded with a promise bigger than any single flight. MedAccess was just a tool, but it carried the weight of a young girl's fight to breathe, and the quiet power of a father determined that no child would have to prove their right to live at 30,000 feet. In the quiet that settled after takeoff, a different storm gathered far beyond the fuselage. Down in the Delta Lounge, Tasha Green set her phone against a coffee cup and hit Go Live. Behind her, the terminal's glass walls shimmered with runway lights. In front, a feed of raw footage from row 23F rolled across her screen. "Family, this is what's happening on Flight 447, she told her audience, voice steady but charged. "A black girl almost lost her life because protocol got weaponized. Watch." The replay showed Monica snatching the inhaler, the whisper caught by Dr. Lee's pen cam, Darnell stepping into the cabin like a verdict. Within minutes, the clip ripped through timelines, 8 million views before midnight. Comments stacked higher than Tasha could scroll. "Protect black passengers. My niece has asthma. This could be her. Let her breathe. Justice for Aaliyah." Across the country, push alerts pinged phones in barber chairs, church basements, late-night diners. NOACP legal staff retweeted the video with a statement, "Monitoring Flight 447 incident. Accountability and training are non-negotiable." Civil rights attorneys stitched reaction videos, breaking down ADA statutes and federal crew rules, explaining how one whisper turned into a systemic hazard. Back on the plane, Jordan Price caught fragments of news from a passenger's screen. Headlines already framed the story. Delta captain intervenes after teen denied asthma inhaler. The words looked surreal next to the half-empty drink cart at his side. Aaliyah scrolled her own phone slowly, seeing her face, tired but composed, in screenshots tagged thousands of times. She tucked it away, unwilling to drown in the noise. Darnell noticed, touched her shoulder, a quiet reminder to stay centered amid the swirl. Tasha's feed kept climbing. Callers from morning radio shows asked her to speak first thing at dawn. A coalition of black flight attendants pledged to push for deeper reforms, vowing no child should fight for oxygen in a cabin again. Somewhere over Missouri, The aircraft's cabin lights dimmed for rest, but beyond its aluminum walls, a digital tide kept rising. Hashtags rolled like drumbeats across the night, each post carrying a single message that blended outrage with resolve. Protect black passengers. The story had left the runway. It was airborne in a different way now, spreading through screens and voices, turning Aaliyah's breath into a movement. Night pressed against the blinds of a modest Atlanta apartment, the kind built from brick long before skyline glass took over. Inside, a single lamp threw a yellow cone across the living room. Monica Ray stood near the window, Delta uniform jacket still draped over a chair where she'd tossed it hours earlier. Her badge and wings were gone. The empty fabric looked like a skin she'd shed. Her husband paced near the sofa, sleeves rolled, face shadowed with exhaustion. "I told you this wasn't the way," he said, voice low but jagged. "All that anger, you aimed it at the wrong people." Monica's arms folded tight. "You weren't the one humiliated," she snapped. "Grounded for a mistake that wasn't even yours. He wrote you off like you were disposable. Somebody had to make him understand." The silence between them vibrated with everything unsaid. Her resentment, his shame, the years of watching opportunity pass them by while others climbed. He rubbed his forehead, looking older than the photo on the mantel. Him in pilot wings, her beside him in training blues, a younger couple believing discipline would outpace bias. "That report didn't ruin me, Monica," he said quietly. "I did when I cut corners on safety. He was right to ground me." Her eyes flickered, defiance dimming for a breath. Then the steel returned. "They don't care about us. They never have." From the muted TV, a headline bannered across the screen. "Flight 447 Scandal. Officer's Revenge Claim." Her own face filled the frame, frozen mid-confession. The ticker scrolled below. "Former attendant under federal review." She turned away from the screen, shoulders trembling. He moved closer, not in comfort, but in weary warning. "You burned the bridge, and the house," he said, "and dragged both of us into the fire." Outside, sirens stitched the night air, fading down the block. Monica stared at her reflection in the window. Tired eyes, hands empty. The satisfaction she had clung to on the plane had evaporated, leaving only the bitter weight of loss. The room felt smaller, their future narrower. Whatever vengeance had promised, it delivered nothing but smoke. And in the quiet of that cramped apartment, the cost of letting hatred steer the controls settled over them like ash. 6 months later, sunlight streamed through tall windows of a Capitol Hill hearing room, catching the brass nameplates lined along the dais. Rows of aides, journalists, and community advocates filled the gallery. Cameras from black-owned media outlets stood beside national news crews, their lenses focused on the witness table, where Aaliyah Brooks sat poised, shoulders squared against the weight of the room. Beside her sat Jordan Price, no longer in a flight attendant's uniform. He wore a dark blazer over an open-collared shirt, a silver pin shaped like a tiny set of lungs fastened to his lapel, the emblem of the nonprofit he and Aaliyah had built. Passengers have the right to breathe. Aaliyah adjusted the microphone, steady despite the quiet hum of anticipation. She glanced at Jordan, who offered a nod, then turned toward the committee. 6 months ago, she began, voice clear, I boarded Flight 407 with an inhaler and a boarding pass. I left with proof that one moment of bias can endanger a life at 30,000 feet. She recounted the scene with a precision shaped by therapy and community workshops, not just memory. She described how live streams and a hidden camera forced accountability, but stressed that reforms, med-access policies, crew retraining, public reporting, had only begun because people refused to look away. Jordan leaned toward the mic. I watched something I knew was wrong, he said, tone steady. And I froze. That's what systems count on. That fear of risking your paycheck. But that fear doesn't keep anyone safe. He spoke of resigning from Delta, of partnering with civil rights advocates to launch their initiative. Our goal isn't just better manuals, he said. It's changing a culture, so no passenger's health or dignity is negotiable. One representative, an elder stateswoman with a history of fighting for air quality rights in housing projects, tapped her pen approvingly. Murmurs of support rippled through the audience. Behind the pair, a projection displayed stats. Medical discrimination complaints down 72%, training compliance at 98%, 3 airlines joining the Med Access standard. Aaliyah closed her testimony with quiet conviction. "I'm here because my father refused to let fear write the ending," she said. "Because a doctor carried a pen that told the truth. And because a young man decided silence wasn't worth more than justice." Applause rose, cautious at first, then rolling, clapping hands, nodding heads, a wave of affirmation echoing across the marble chamber. For Aaliyah, it wasn't about heroics or viral fame. It was about breath reclaimed, doors opened, and a movement born from a single cabin's reckoning. A reminder that survival, when claimed with grace, can light the way for others still fighting for air. Sunlight poured through the tall window behind the witness table, painting a warm stripe across polished wood and the edge of Aaliyah's notes. The committee room held its breath, waiting. She looked out at faces, lawmakers, church leaders, reporters, neighbors from Atlanta who'd flown up to stand with her. Her voice was steady. The calm born of storms survived. Every breath deserves protection. Document injustice. Share the truth. The words settled over the chamber like a benediction. Jordan sat beside her, pride softening the lines around his eyes. Across the room, elders in Sunday hats nodded, hands pressed to hearts, hearing echoes of marches and meetings from decades past. Cameras clicked, but Aaliyah's focus was on the sunlight catching dust in the air, the quiet proof that even after turbulence, clarity can break through. She allowed herself a small smile, gentle, resilient, as if releasing the last tether to that terrifying afternoon. Outside, bells from a nearby church tolled noon, their rhythm weaving with the applause that rose from the gallery. In that sound lived solidarity, a promise that her fight had built more than policy. It had carved out room for others to breathe freely and to be believed. The applause slowly softened, replaced by a quiet hum of voices gathering their things, preparing to leave the chamber. Aaliyah closed her folder, fingers lingering on its cover for a heartbeat. She stood, inhaler tucked safely in her pocket, and turned toward the room one last time. "Stories like this don't end in a headline," her voice carried easily, warm now instead of trembling. "They keep working through every policy changed, every life made safer because someone spoke up." She glanced toward the gallery where families with kids, students, church elders, and airline workers stood, shoulder to shoulder. If you see someone's rights slipping away, don't look down or turn your phone off. Record. Speak. Share the truth, so the next person doesn't have to fight alone. A ripple of assent moved through the crowd, soft amens, hands lifting in quiet solidarity. Jordan offered a nod, pride and purpose alive in his eyes. Darnell, watching from the back, gave the faintest smile, a promise that her fight had honored every lesson he'd tried to teach. As Aaliyah stepped toward the exit, the light from the Capitol steps spilled across her path. She walked into it, steady and unafraid, inviting everyone listening to carry the work forward. Aaliyah closed her folder, fingers lingering on its cover for a heartbeat. She stood, inhaler tucked safely in her pocket, and turned toward the room one last time. "Stories like this don't end in a headline," her voice carried easily, warm now instead of trembling. "They keep working through every policy changed, every life made safer because someone spoke up." She glanced toward the gallery where families with kids, students, church elders, and airline workers stood, shoulder to shoulder. If you see someone's rights slipping away, don't look down or turn your phone off. Record. Speak. Share the truth, so the next person doesn't have to fight alone. A ripple of assent moved through the crowd, soft amens, hands lifting in quiet solidarity. Jordan offered a nod, pride and purpose alive in his eyes. Darnell, watching from the back, gave the faintest smile, a promise that her fight had honored every lesson he'd tried to teach. As Aaliyah stepped toward the exit, the light from the Capitol steps spilled across her path. She walked into it, steady and unafraid, inviting everyone listening to carry the work forward.